A major disaster has happened. You've been forced to evacuate. You've got all your gear and you're part of a group and you've got your plan. Normal communications are down. This video here is going to give you some alternate ideas of things that you can do now and prepare ahead of time in case something like that happens. This is your Urban Sentinel. Let's get into it. So you're prepping, you're planning, and as life goes, nothing always goes according to plan. A situation has occurred where you have to evacuate and you need to get in contact with people in your group. You've got plans set up, you've got rendezvous points, that sort of thing, but the traditional means of communication, telephone lines, cell phone systems are down, even portable radios, handheld radios, maybe there's interference from a large geomagnetic storm or EMPs. So you have to rely on simple forms of communication to let your group know where you're at, and people can catch up to each other at a rendezvous point or some other off-site location. So what I'm going to show you in this video is going to be some simple, basic, easy to do icons, hieroglyphs as it were, that you can leave messages that give enough information for the people who know what to look for, where to look for, and what it means, to be able to have them catch up with you, meet up with you, or in some cases go to other locations. Now, I'm sure many of you have had situations where perhaps there's been a major disaster, a hurricane, tornado, something of that effect, and there have been structures that have been compromised, damaged. FEMA or other government agencies, search and rescue parties, that sort of thing, when they go and inspect an area, they use certain symbols to indicate what is the exact nature of that structure. Now, what you'll usually see is one line. That represents that there is some team or person inside whatever that structure is at that moment. Second line indicates that someone went in and now they've exited. Now, with this, they'll usually have the date and the time up in this area. If they're part of a search team, they'll usually have either their unit number or their individual ID number, so basically you know who. Inside the structure, whether it be a house, a convenience store, a multi-unit apartment building, whatever it is, they'll have some indication of, if let's say there were two people trapped inside, they might indicate alive. Let's say there was one person that was dead, to indicate that there was a dead body. This gives you an idea that on this date and time, this person or group went into this structure, found these number of people alive, these number of people dead. Any other notations, perhaps there's a gas leak, or perhaps there's something with the structure itself, they might indicate that. So this lets people know from the outside that this building, this house, whatever it is, has been inspected. Most of the time when you see them, you'll see them on doors, spray painted, sometimes on the wall. They usually do three things. One, it's usually put on the most observable and accessible point of a structure. So this would be, traditionally speaking, on the front of a building, on the front door. If a door opens outwards, they're not going to put it on the door in case that door gets blown open or something changes in the outside structure. It would be to the side where the door won't cover it. If there's no door, again, it would be on a wall that's clearly observed, that isn't obstructed by something. If, say, for example, it was a tornado and you've got a school bus that's blown across the front of the building and you can't get access to it, it would be on the next most readily accessible point somewhere on there. Now, that's set up for search and rescue. That's something that they use so they can quickly identify where an area has been searched. So when they come up a street, they know that, okay, all of these structures in this area, that we've checked and cleared them on this side of the street, but there are no markings on the other side. So now we have an idea that we need to start checking and clearing on the other side. That's for them. That also can be used in certain circumstances that you may need to mark and indicate an area you yourself have exited from. But what I'm going to show you next is something that would be more in terms of covert indications for a group that you're with, people that are either coming to help you out or you're going to meet up with. So first symbol up. Exactly what it looks like. It looks like a house. home, that's your core indicator. That basically says to whoever might come to a location that you, knowing that you're part of the group, you're either at or leaving from home. So an arrow out would indicate that you've left home, versus an arrow in indicates that you're going home. So it may be a situation where you work at a location and outside of your office, your job, wherever it is, you might have a parking area, someplace that is readily observable. You might have someone that's part of your group. It could be a relative, a spouse, a sibling, whatever the case may be, that they're coming to that location to meet up with you. But due to the circumstances, you can't stay in that location. You might place that marking on something tangible and non-movable. So you don't want to put it on a car. You don't want to put it on anything that could easily be knocked over or taken. You might look for something simple, but yet somewhat permanent, such as a postal collection box, the blue boxes that you see some places, or utility boxes for traffic light control, something nearby that you've already designated that if this happens and I have to leave, look for a marking at this location. And they'll go and they'll see that indicator that, okay, you're going back home. Next up, looks like a little tent. Basically what this is this indicates either a camp or a rendezvous. I'm not going to write the whole word out. My handwriting's terrible. That's basically an alternate location, someplace other than your residence that people would normally go to find you. Or if they've gone to your residence, you might put that symbol someplace on a door or some other structure that they know to look for, which will indicate to them that, okay, you've left from here and that's where you're going. Now, the primary reason why you'll start to notice that these drawings are very simplistic is, one, it's basically a low skill sketch. You don't need to be an artist. You don't need to be picture perfect. You just want to be able to quickly, but somewhat clearly, put that symbol down, and the people that are looking for it will understand what it means. You don't want to have to write things out. You may be under a situation where you've got to go and you only have a few seconds to stop and do this, so you don't need to start writing out notes about, I'm leaving from here and I'm going to go find my aunt and then we're going to go down to this, but you don't have time for all of that. Plus, in terms of operational security, you don't want someone who has pure, plain and simple ill intent knowing who you are, exactly where you're going to go, who's with you, what you intend to do, because as far as they're concerned, if they're looking to loot, rob, and do harm to people, you literally are giving them a, DoorDash menu that they can order up and say, okay, these people are going to this location and this is where they're meeting up to get all these supplies, and that's where they'll be. If they see these symbols, they may have a clue that this means something, but it may take them a little while to figure it out. And even if they have an idea, they don't know exactly who the individuals are. They don't know what the exact location is. It could be an area that once you're there, then you can then proceed to go exactly where it is. You don't have to give the street address. You don't have to say specifically this house with the gray roof and the red barn in the background. You know where you're going, the people in your group know where you're going, so it's just simply a matter of following the breadcrumbs, because you may not always specifically be able to go by car or take the shortest, quickest route, most direct way there. You may have to detour, and depending upon the scope of the disaster, it may not be immediately afterwards. It might be several days later before you can make your way to that location. Train tracks, road, which is any type of road, including a highway, and water can be a river, a lake, it could be, the beach, along the ocean, whatever the case may be. And again, you're doing this not for a stranger. You're doing this for people who already understand what this means and they have an idea of what they're looking for. So these, again, are physical indicators of either where you're going to or the route they may be traveling. All right, now what we have is a bridge or an overpass. It's pretty much indicating something that goes over just like that, a road, a highway, waterway, whatever the case may be, but it's the structure itself that goes over that you're indicating. A tunnel. Now, it could be a train tunnel, it could be a tunnel system for cars, it could be a large section of covered parking area that effectively is one set of buildings after the next set of buildings, or something underground. So it may be a building that has underground parking, or several buildings that have connecting roadways that run between them. You know, there's a surface entrance at one side, and it might be several blocks before the exit comes out the other end. This would be an indication for woods or a park or a forest, something along that lines. And again, these are symbols that you're going to put down in the locations where it's easy for a person who's looking for them to spot them and know what they are. Obviously, this one here, person. Now, this usually is in reference to you, but it could be, depending upon the location, in reference to someone else that's part of the group. This, again, a small x and then an actual number representing the people in the group. You might have a 5-person group and you find out that 2 of the people in your group haven't shown up to the rendezvous point, and you and one other person meet up with the 3rd person. So now there's 3 of you. You might leave this indication with a 3. So those 2 other people, when they get to that rendezvous point and they realize that, okay, we are here late, they had to move on. They know that, okay, the 3 other people in our group made it here, waited the amount of time, and then they left. So at least they know that 3 of you are together. This would indicate a person either dead or injured, depending upon the situation. Now, that might be someone part of your group, or it could be in reference to perhaps there's a building that you were going to occupy, but the building was damaged and there are a lot of dead or injured people inside. It could be a situation where perhaps you've got bandits, marauders, raiders that are attacking people, basically making kill zones, and they're shooting people that come into those areas. So that could be an indication that that area there, you go in, you're not going to make it out. Now, the primary thing you have to remember is, one, you need to have at least a couple of Sharpie markers. Black Sharpie marker, use the medium tip or the wide tip, because you're going to be writing on surfaces most likely that are outside and exposed, for the primary reason that you want people that are part of your group to be able to identify your markings and not get it confused with anything else that might be in the area. So you want to avoid places that have a lot of graffiti on them. You want to write on surfaces that overall metal surfaces that maybe have a coat of paint or are unpainted, but you can still get it on there. You want to have something somewhat contrasting. So if you've got a black Sharpie marker, even though you may write on, as I referenced before, the postal collection box, which is a medium to dark blue, that might not stand out as much in low light situations, especially if you have other people following along, that as they're moving along, it's getting darker. And for security purposes, it may not be in their best interest to click, turn on a headlamp or a flashlight every, 300 feet to 500 feet, whatever the case may be. So you might put that marking on the white part of the logo, or you might find something of a lighter color to put it on. And you want to think about basically not having things directly at eye level, because no matter what, when people walk, they tend to look out at eye level. They may be aware of what's on the ground and often to the edge of their peripheral and just above them. You want to put it somewhere between mid-chest to waist height on these different types of objects that you know and your group knows to look for. So they can walk up a street, they can walk up a sidewalk, they can cut across a parking lot. If they're following the breadcrumbs that you're leaving, they'll know to look down, look low, look at certain objects. So as they get closer, they can look to see if there's an indicator there. And what you always want to try to do is have that symbol located as you're facing it on the approach. So if you leave from one location and you indicate that you're going effectively up this road, and you go to put another mark at a corner because you're taking a right, you want that symbol, that icon, to be facing the direction that you just came from, so they see it as they approach. So this way they can move on. And when you're making these marks, again, you don't want to make them too high or too low, because if someone's watching, they may not casually be watching you for you doing something. They may not even really pay attention to you. You might stop on the street, you're looking around to the left, you're looking around to the right. That's all they really notice. Meanwhile, with your unobserved hand, you've made that symbol, made that mark, and you moved on. But if they see you raising your hand up, reaching above your head, writing something, or bending way down low and writing something, that may get their attention, and they may come down to take a look. It may mean nothing to them, or they may decide that they've got the time, they'll follow you. Now, this circle, it looks like a poorly drawn sun. That means an observation area or a signal area. That means that when someone sees that, they know to take a look around, do a 360, look up, look down, observe the area, because you're near your rendezvous point. And at that point, you may signal. It might be using a flashlight or some other audible indicator to let the people that are at the rendezvous point know that you've arrived. And again, this goes on the basis that you want to maintain a certain level of security, so you don't want to just waltz right up to your location, wherever that may be. This will let people that are in your group know that you're a friendly versus a hostile, because if someone comes up and knocks on the front door of a cabin or something, the people inside go, okay, one, that's not how we do it. We don't knock on the front door. We bang that garbage can that's on the side of the house. That lets, the rest of the group know that, hey, we're here and it's safe to open up. So when you have something like this, that'll indicate that, okay, you're at a location, give a signal so we know where you're at. And it may be an alternate location that you're meeting up at. It may be a location that you hadn't planned on using, but it's the best thing that you have. It could be a parking garage, or it could be a closed down office center, whatever the case may be. This next one is basically a small circle and 2 cross spears. It indicates a hostile area or a dangerous area. It basically is something that you might put up. It doesn't necessarily have to be along your direct pathway, but it's usually an indicator that there's some type of threat or danger in that area. It could be a case of, let's say, in a completely collapsed society, it might be an area where you've got snipers shooting down certain streets, or you've got gangs and raiders that are occupying areas and they're harassing and attacking anyone that comes into their territory. And of course, the good old-fashioned directional arrow showing, taking a right or left when you're facing whatever the icon is, or that your line of travel is going in one particular direction. All right, so I'll give you a quick short example of a situation where you're using some of these icons in a scenario. So you're going to 2 people in your group, you're going to their house, and the 3 of you are going to go to the primary rendezvous point where the rest of the group is going to be meeting up. You get to their house, and as you're going up to the house, you see on their porch or on their railing a marked area that they've already designated. This is where you look for it, and you see 2 people, the home structure, and they're indicating that they left from the house. So you know that, okay, they're going to go to the rendezvous area. So you make your way to the rendezvous area. On approach to that rendezvous area, you see the symbol for the rendezvous area and hostile. So that indicates there was some type of danger, some type of threat at that rendezvous area. And then unfortunately, someone was either killed or injured, the small x and the number 1. And then this directional arrow, based upon where you're facing when you see this symbol, indicates the direction that the people in your group went to. Now, again, it comes down to, this is something that you'd have to work out with the people in your group, so everyone effectively knows what to do, knows how to make the icons, knows how to mark areas so that way they're easily spotted and you can follow along without too much problems. Because again, you may not have time to write out long notes. You may not want to leave messages tacked up on your house saying, I've gone to this location and I'll wait there until sundown and then I'm going to this location. You need to be able to keep things as low profile as possible. And again, when people know what to look for and where to look for it, it makes it much easier for them to catch up with you or to get to an alternate location if you've worked it out. Now, if it's a major disaster and you've got hundreds of people all around you, you may not be able to be as discreet about it as you'd like to be. But again, they may not know what you're doing. And even if they have an idea that you're leaving some type of marking for someone, they may just say, hey, none of my concern. I need to move on. We need to get out of this area, whatever the threat is. Now, I talked about using Sharpie markers, which is the easiest thing to do. You could use spray paint, or you could use lipstick if you had that, or some other type of material that will make at least a contrasting enough image for you to do it. It's just the practicality of using the markers because they last a long time and you don't really have to worry about them, for what they're used for, not making, an imprint on it. Certain things you're just not going to be able to write on, but that's a few and far between problem that you have to worry about. And again, this is on the basis that your radio communication is not working, if you've got handheld radios or other types of communication, or it may be monitored, because you may be in a situation where you had to evacuate under force or threat of force. It may be domestic, it may be foreign, but you don't want to start broadcasting on radio waves or even cell phones that can be intercepted, tracked, and triangulated, and then where you thought you were sneaking away undetected, suddenly now you're getting surrounded, and you're getting, you know, at the minimum, you might be detained, or worse, you might be dead in a ditch somewhere. So it's just something to consider in the areas of covert communications. It might not be something that you need to use. You may have something else worked out that works better for you. And again, this is just another tool to put into the toolbox of your entire working arsenal for prepping. Well, that's it for now. Catch you guys in the next one.